What's going on, guys? I'm about to show you a video that I am premiering right now. And we are back once again with another one. This time we're going to talk about Khamzat versus Paulo Costa in the upcoming pay-per-view of UFC 294 live in Abu Dhabi, which is going to be great because if you're watching it in the West Coast like I am, well, guess what? You're going to be able to watch it in the morning time and then have the entire Saturday to yourself, or maybe watch other fights that are going on that day. But not only are we going to talk about Paulo Costa and Khamzat Chimaev in particular, I'm going to talk to you about why the UAE has given Khamzat Chimaev citizenship. And it has a lot to do with being able to fight in America. And of course, it definitely has a lot to do with his friendship with none other than the Chechnyan dictator, Ramzan Kadyrov, who is also, by the way, if you guys are a little bit illiterate in the geopolitical sphere of things, is an ally of Vladimir Putin. I'm going to go into a little bit of history with Ramzan Kadyrov in a little bit and how all of this ties. But as you know, a lot of it has to deal with Ukraine and the conflict going on over there and the lines that are drawn in the sand with the United States on one side and Russia on the other side, and then with Ukraine being an ally of the United States and Russia right now being a contrasting interest to Western counterparts. So before we go into the kicks and punches, let's talk geopolitics of Paulo Costa and Khamzat Chimaev. So Khamzat Chimaev has been granted citizenship in Abu Dhabi. Now, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that he gets the same rights and privileges as, let's say, a regular, normal Emirati that is born local, native, and has a passport in that particular land? Well, my answer is probably not. And in only by paper, he is an Emirati citizen. And what do I mean by the privileges? Well, maybe perhaps he's not going to be able to buy a building off of an Emirati if he wishes to, if he ever gets to be in that type of level of money where he can just buy buildings, sort of like what Floyd Mayweather does. I think the guy goes out and buys buildings and businesses and whatnot and everything in between. But those are some of the things that he can't do. Another thing that he can't do, he also can't, let's say, run for public office. I mean, they're a monarch, so I don't think that has any, sense of meritocracy and a type of politicians that they let in their particular sphere of government and influence. But nevertheless, he has the same privileges as any other normal Emirati citizen, which is good enough to, guess what, be able to fight in the United States. And why is that significant? Well, for those of you that don't know, the Emiratis have a stake in the UFC, just like the Saudis. As you guys know, the Saudis are fallen into this whole thing. And by the way, I'm going to go into a religious aspect of it too when it comes to, let's say, Islamic prophecies of the end days. I'm going to go into that in a little bit, along with Ramzan Kadyrov and his history. So when you are an Emirati citizen, right, you have the privileges of an American citizen, meaning that you can travel freely in the free world and all its allies and everything that is involved in that sphere of things, i.e. what people call the New World Order. Some may call it the UN for official sake. Some call it the Council of Foreign Relations. All of those things, all correlated in this matter. So Khamzat has been having visa issues coming to the United States to fight. This is why you haven't been able to see him. Why? Because the guy loves the fight. If you guys remember in the pandemic days of the Fight Island Abu Dhabi events, Khamzat was fighting almost every week. And then on top of that, he would want another one and another one. And then eventually the train just started stopping, especially right after the Gilbert Burns fight. And then, of course, after that, he went on to fight Kevin Holland and finish him emphatically within the first round of submission. So after that, we never got to see him since. And perhaps maybe a lot of that has to deal with the effective visa ban and issues that comes with, let's say, Russian citizens. So he says he no longer wants to rep Sweden. Part of the things that he says is because they are a highly socialist country to the point where they do tax you heavily. And if you're a UFC star and a sportsman like Khamzat Chimaev, you would imagine the level of pay that you would have to give up to the Swedish government as a Swedish citizen and as a resident. So it was a multitude of reasons as to why they chose to give Khamzat this particular opportunity. So now that the UFC, and I was going back to the Emirati about they have a stake in the UFC, right? So the fact that the Emiratis have a stake in the UFC, that means that they want Khamzat to be able to fight even outside of the Emirates, which means that, let's say, if he gets to have a title fight, which is on the horizon, eventually it's going to happen. It's either going to be with Sean Strickland, or it's either going to be with Israel Adesanya, or anybody that is up there in the 185 division, maybe even with Dricus du Plessis. Now imagine how great that would be, right? But then imagine if they had to put the fight in South Africa and maybe they have affiliations with America and not with Russia, and perhaps that would have been an issue. So now they just alleviated a lot of these things through Khamzat Chimaev having citizenship. Okay, so now that I explained to you why it's important for Khamzat Chimaev to have citizenship with the Emiratis and how that's going to help him get fights in the United States and venues such as Las Vegas, Chicago, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, all the top cities where you want to hold fight events, but especially in Vegas, right? Which, as we know, is the capital of the fight world in America in particular. Okay, so now that we understand and establish that, let's talk about who Ramzan Kadyrov is. Why is he such a bad guy? And why does he constantly post Instagram pictures of him and Khamzat sparring with Khamzat, making it look like that he beats Khamzat up, when in reality, it's just Khamzat perhaps maybe fearing for his life? And how does this relate to, let's say, the Wagner Group, the guy that got killed recently in a plane crash, the leader of the Wagner Group, called the chef Prajonsky or something like that, his name is. So Ramzan Kadyrov was part of the Chechen resistance movement back in the 90s, him and his father, and the 90s to the 2000s. He was a former jihadist who eventually became partners with Russia. And then after he became partners with Russia, he was given what you would call in a very similar position as what governors would, let's say, take in a certain region of the United States, right? In that type of position, but in a Russian way. So basically, he is the Russian Muslim president, because obviously Russia is a predominantly Christian Orthodox country ran by Vladimir Putin. So as a result, they do have a Muslim population that live in the Caucasus areas, in the Caucasus Mountains, in the Dagestani parts of Russia, in the Chechen parts of Russia, in the stands that are all over the place, right? Which Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, all these former Soviet states that have a Muslim heritage behind them. Ramzan Kadyrov is damn near the leader and the commander of that particular region, appointed by none other than Vladimir Putin. This was as far back as 2004, when he was very young. So that's basically who Ramzan Kadyrov is. And now he has this reputation of, let's say, throwing certain people off rooftops. Let's just say people that side with the Jesse Smollett and the Elton Johns of the world, and how I can say it so lightly, right? He throws them off the roof. He goes out and kills dissidents, according to news. Now, I don't know if I can verify that, if that's real or not, but this is what they say. But nonetheless, this is a problem and a controversy when Ramzan Kadyrov is friends with many fighters. A lot of Chechen fighters that fight in the UFC and even in boxing with the likes of Arthur Beterbiev. So this is a very influential man. All right. So, if you guys want to watch the rest of that red hot video, I suggest you guys go check out the I'm sorry, this is the live portion of that, which you see in the first 9 minutes. But if you want to see the rest of the 20-minute video of that, go to the video section. It's actually still on the premiere at this current moment of time. I don't know if that's a good idea to do. I don't know if that is something that would be conducive to, let's say, YouTube views. But as you know, with anybody that's trying out anything new, such as YouTube or any type of social media situation, and whatever it is that you do in terms of content creation, you're going to experiment and experience different ways of promoting it and uploading it or doing live, when to do live, when not to do live. But nonetheless, I thought that it was a good time to get on this little Sunday night live right now to basically recap some of the things that are going on in the combat sports world. Now, as you guys know, I went and did that video with Kamzat and his new citizenship, switching from Sweden to the UAE and the political implications of that. If you want more information on that, I think I've stressed enough all the information that I could possibly throw in that particular content on the video section. But I'd also like to talk about the fights that are going to be happening in the future. Starting from now, we are right now in the date of October 1st, which, by the way, is going to be one of the most explosive months of all combat sports. For one, you have Logan Paul taking on Dylan Dennis. Obviously, not the biggest fight for, let's say, the hardcore fans, but nonetheless, it's a great fight that has a great storyline, but also brings up a lot of questions on how young men are going to, let's say, proceed with their future relationships and how they're going to, let's say, pick a partner and what is appropriate. Is a past something that is important to take a look at, or if it's not, or if it's just all situational depending on who you're dealing with? And also, I've mentioned this in past previous live streams, to where I had mentioned Logan Paul is not as, how do I say this? He doesn't have a high abundance of choices in a way that people like to believe. Okay, because a lot of people say, well, why doesn't he just go out there and find himself a good girl, which is a better and more conducive happiness for his life, right? Which any God fearing, respecting man, then again, we're talking about Logan Paul, who has kicked off a co host of his who has religious views that he just doesn't agree with. So, yeah, not necessarily anybody I would consider a God fearing man. And maybe that's the problem. The problem is maybe that he's in a position where he only has a limited amount of choice based on the fact that he is who he is. And for him to, let's say, go after somebody that is conservative or somebody that has any type of moral value to their system would be almost impossible to find, because they would not have any interest in him whatsoever, because for the obvious reasons that, well, the guy is just not really the most moral person out there in terms of a lifelong partner, or somebody that you can look at as maybe even a father figure to, let's say, future kids. But that's neither here or there. We're talking about people from the apparent of what we see in the world of, let's say, social media and overall mainstream media, and anything that can capture them through a camera lens, or again, any type of media outlet out there, where you're going to see these guys are going to be portrayed in one different way as opposed to the other. But nonetheless, I think that's going to be an interesting fight when it does happen, and if it happens, because the way that it's looking right now, there's a lot of threats going on that this fight may not happen because of this lawsuit going on. So, what about that? What about this lawsuit? Is it ethical for one fighter to go and sue another fighter? And yes, Logan puts it on this aspect of, well, she's the one doing it. It has nothing to do with me. Yeah, but at the same time, you know that it has a lot to do with you, and alleviating any type of responsibility out of it is just, I mean, just nothing more than just a technical way of explaining that you are not the one that chose to do this, but it does benefit you in a way that you can create mind games out of this particular opponent of yours who's getting sued by whether it's you or somebody that's within your camp, i.e., the person that you're in a relationship with. It's really interesting. It's interesting how this is going to play out in these last 2 weeks with these two. And of course, you have KSI and Tommy Fury as the main event. And can you imagine just these two guys walking out after we just witnessed Logan and Dylan Dennis, no matter how one particular result goes to the other? Well, the other fight that is happening after that is on October the 21st. I believe it is October the 21st. Um with the UFC. No, I'm sorry. Is that, yeah, it is. October 21st UFC. That is UFC 294, which is the card that we were talking about with Islam Makhachev and Charles Oliveira. Obviously comes out Chimaev and Paulo Costa. I urge you guys to take a look at that video that I did with Kamzat Chimaev's citizenship. In the end, I talk about the technical breakdowns of that fight and how that's going to go. I urge you guys to take a look at that. And then also, Magomed Ankalaev is also in this card with against Johnny Walker. Now that's an interesting fight because here comes Johnny Walker, who is an ever improving 205er. Okay. So he's in a situation where he's had some sort of tough fights along the way. He's had uh some questionable outings, right? He's gotten knocked out. Then he started developing himself. He started getting injuries because of post fight celebrations. Just doing a lot of things that's just not smart. And then he gets into this streak. Well, it couldn't be the most perfect time for him to fight Magomed Ankalaev, which many may say that he is the uncrowned 205 champion based on the fight that he had with Jan Blachowicz, which went to a draw. As you've seen also with Ramzan Kadyrov sort of protesting towards Dana White, but to the lack of knowledge of Ramzan Kadyrov's part, maybe he didn't understand that Dana White had nothing to do with any of these scorings, but only the promotion and anything that leads up to that fight and anything that needs to be facilitated for that fight to happen. But when it comes to the commissions, when it comes to the doctors and their choices of whether stopping the fight or whether keeping the fight going, that is ultimately not up to the promotion and for ethical reasons. So here's Magomed Ankalaev coming off of that loss, now coming in to fight Johnny Walker. So another one of those fights that's making this card just as big as it is. And then underneath that, you have Nazardine Imavov taking on Ekram Ali Serkov, who, by the way, was knocked out by Khamzat Chimaev early in his career, probably the only loss that he's had. Now he's in the UFC. And if he does somehow rise through the rankings, we could possibly see a rematch with Khamzat Chimaev and uh, Ikram. And which is interesting because he was a world combat sambo champion at his weight class. And then he comes in there with Khamzat, gets knocked out. Then now they're both in the UFC. It's almost like a Joe Duffy versus Conor McGregor situation. If you guys don't remember, they brought in Joe Duffy just a few years after they signed Conor McGregor for the reason being that they wanted to get Conor to avenge this particular loss against Joe Duffy. So it never came to fruition. Joe Duffy just fell through the rankings. Conor McGregor, we all know what happened to him, well documented. But I feel that that's the type of situation they want to do with this particular fight. Maybe set up some sort of rematch. Maybe not so much of their top plans for Khamzat because Khamzat had already fought him. But what would happen if, let's say, Ikram becomes a star? starts taking people out. He starts taking out Imavov in this fight. Then maybe in the next fight, he takes out another top 185. Or maybe let's say Paulo Costa loses in this card and then he fights Paulo Costa next, which only leaves him very close to the likes of Khamzat Chimaev. Now, what if they match him up with Jared Cannonier? Same thing. He's just one win away from beating one of these top 10, top 5 guys and saying that, you know what, I earned the right to avenge my only loss against Khamzat, of which they can possibly build some sort of star around that. Saeed Nurmagomedov taking on Munin Garov in the opener of that particular pay-per-view. Then in the early prelims, what do we got here? Nathaniel Wood taking on Muhammad Nayev. And then Mike Breenan, Anshul Jubil. I believe this is Anshul Dubil's debut. Let's see. He's an Indian mixed martial artist from New Delhi. 28 years old. Let's see. He fought in the road to the UFC. Won the road to the UFC lightweight tournament, which was, yes, the final of that was in Las Vegas. Okay, and that was for the Lewis versus Spivak fight, which is back in February. So, yes, this is not his UFC debut, his second fight in the UFC. And obviously, the road to the UFC tournament is something completely different. So, somebody look out for in this particular card, right? Because obviously, with cards like this, are always going to want to bring up certain people. Jin Yu Fry taking on Victoria Dudkovoka. Preliminary card. Tim Elliott. This is the one that I've been looking forward to, and I've done a video on this, by the way. I urge you guys to take a look at that on the video section. It is titled The Psychology Between Tim Elliott and Muhammad Mokaev. Now, what's really interesting about this card is that you have these two guys that are in these crossroads, right? You look at Tim Elliott, he's 36 years old. Muhammad Mokaev is 23, both 5'6", with the reach a little bit longer, Muhammad Mokaev. But Tim Elliott has been a former world title challenger. Muhammad Mokaev is this new guy that they're trying to build up, somebody that has the backing of the Bahraini government and its royal family who sponsors him. Then he has the backing of England because he lives in Wigan, which is a community outside of Manchester. So you have this veteran versus prospect matchup. And then on top of that, it just seems like in the life of Muhammad Mokaev, he has just everything with his ducks in a row. He's got everybody backing him up from England all the way to Bahrain and even in the United States and wherever it is that he decides to train, maybe even in Dagestan. He just has all these resources. And then on top of that, his agent is the same agent for Conor McGregor, which is none other than Audi Atir. So he's got the whole world in his hands and he's got the entire earth basically helping him. Whereas with Tim Elliott, he has this situation in his life where he has some sort of divorce case going on, where there was an infidelity involved with his coach and his wife. So there's a lot of problems going on into this fight. So you got to think, how will he deal with all these issues as he steps into this fight with a highly touted prospect in Muhammad Mokaev, who just has nothing to worry about other than just the fact that he just needs to go out there and prove he's the best in the world and has all the resources to do so. Muhammad Yahya taking on Trevor Peak. Javed Basharat, 14-0 bantamweight, taking on Victor Henry. That's going to be a good one. Abu Azatar taking on Sidikris Dumas. That guy fought not too long ago. I believe that guy fought in one of the Florida cards. I believe it was a Jacksonville card that this guy had fought under. Let's see here. Where is the tapology for this guy? Because he did fight not too long ago. So 18-1, the Reaper, Dumas. Let's see here. He fought in Cody Brundage, which is on an ABC card. Yeah, and that was back in June. Okay, and He wins a unanimous decision in that one. Obviously, he gets choked out by Josh Friend. Prior to that, he was supposed to fight Abu Ezzatar as far back as March, but never came to fruition up until now. So here we are. So, what else is in this card that's worth mentioning? Let's see here. All right. Let's see here. Hold on just a second. Here we go. So that is the prelims card. Yeah, that's about it. So the main card, I think, is the absolute attraction of it all in this particular event. Obviously, they had all the Chechens and the Dagestanis on the card because they are the main attraction of the Muslim world. And what better way than to feature them all in the pay per view and then have Muhammad Makayev as basically the main event for the prelims before the kickoff of the pay per view. And then also the upcoming card, you have UFC 295 with Jones and Stipe. That's going to be an interesting one. Now, what is the full card on that one? Let's take a look at Tapology if they have any updates on this particular card. So far, we just have Jones and Miocic. You obviously have Jiri Prochazka and Alex Pereira for the world championship of the 205 division, which is vacant. Now, this particular weight class right here, I think, is really interesting because Alex Pereira now has a chance to chase greatness even after just falling short in the way that he did in the Izzy rematch for the world title at 185. Now he goes up to 205, has a win over the guy that has beaten Israel Adesanya before in a unanimous decision in a champion versus champion match. Now he beats that guy who's a former world champion, and now he has to fight the guy who is the literal lineal champion of this weight class. And so if he was to beat him, there would be no dispute about it, even if, let's say, Jamal Hill has something to say about it, because obviously Jamal Hill has some stake to the claim based on the fact that somebody got injured. He stepped in. He happens to be the right matchup against Glover, did the job, and then got the title, but then got injured and decided to do the right and ethical thing in his own mind and ethos and decided to just drop the belt while he was injured. And here we are. Because of that, the guy who basically dominated that entire division for an entire decade is the headline of that. And in the co-main event, it's almost like Jones saying, hey, you know what? You guys now have a chance to fight for my title on my card. Now, you guys have the chance to prove who's the best in that weight class while I'm up here dominating this particular weight class right here. Real interesting here. I just noticed with the Tapology world ranking. So John Jones is ranked number 2 in the heavyweight world division overall MMA. So in that case, who would be number 1? Okay, so they have Jones here as number 1. Okay, Sergey Pavlovich, which by the way is really interesting, right? Because a lot of people are saying that this is the guy that is going to be the next guy to take over the heavyweight division. And how interesting, his only loss was against Alistair Overeem, who, by the way, John Jones would probably beat the living breaks off of. And based on the fact that, well, he did train with a guy, he probably did break his wheels every time they went out and trained in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm talking about John Jones and Alistair Overeem. Sergey Pavlovich just was not in the right time of his career to take on Alistair Overeem at that time. But nonetheless, he's a very scary guy. And a lot of people say that, well, if John Jones is going to retire, it's probably because he wants to avoid guys like this. And Stipe just seems to be the perfect matchup for him right now in the twilight of his career. He's also at the end of his career, but they are also both ranked very high and deserve to be there. But yet they're been taking a lot of damage all throughout the years, right? So it's not really highly unlikely that this is going to be their possible last fight. I'm talking about John Jones and what's his name? Tony Ferguson. Speaking of Tony Ferguson, the rest of the let's go to the rest of the fight on this card right here. So you have Jessica Andrade taking on Mackenzie Dern. That's a good matchup, right? Former champion Jessica Andrade, Mackenzie Dern getting up there in the rankings. Joshua Van taking on Kevin Borjas. Matt Schnell taking on Steve Erzag. Jared Gordon takes on Mark Madison. That's a very good card right there. Mateus Rebekshi taking on Nurul Aliyev. And then you have Dennis Bazushka taking on Jamal Emmers. Matt Frivola taking on Benoit Saint Denis, the former French Special Forces soldier turned MMA fighter. Nazim Sadikov taking on Vyacheslav Borechev. And then Tabitha Ritchie taking on Lupita Godinez. That's an interesting one. How about this? The canceled card of Derek Brunson versus Roman Dolezzi. Now, Derek Brunson has been recently released from the UFC, which is really interesting, right? That's really interesting. I really find that interesting that he got released from the UFC because obviously he was on a winning track, right? Now, Darren Till is no longer in the UFC. Yet, well, where am I going with that? So he's no longer in the UFC, but Derek Brunson is. How do you make sense of that? Well, the thing is, you don't, okay? Because I know what the fans are thinking in their head when they look at a situation like this. They think to themselves, well, if you're not in the UFC, you're not the best in the world. That's just the way that a lot of people perceive it. Triple H, the CEO or whatever position he's at in the WWE at the current moment of time, but he's a former professional wrestler. As you guys know, the former leader of D-Generation X and known as Paul Levesque or whatever his name is, but Hunter Hearst Helmsley. So he said something to the effect where he's met a lot of MMA fighters in a gym, but he asks them all the time, well, do you fight for the UFC? And then when they say no, he says something to the effect, well, that doesn't really matter, as sort of an elitist type of mentality, as to say, like, well, I am a WWE superstar. I'm a professional wrestler, and I am basically playing in the NFL of professional wrestling. I am basically in the UFC of professional wrestling, and you're not. That's just sort of how he looks at it. Okay, that I understand, but then when you look at Darren Till, he's had a few losses, so you can kind of think, okay, him not being in the UFC is sort of justified, but then at the same time, you got to think to yourself, is Derek Brunson not being in the UFC justified, especially when they were just about to give him a matchup against Roman Dolezzi, a top 185 contender that's coming up on the rise? And then Derek Brunson sort of has a winning record going into the fight, yet he's no longer in the UFC. The only thing that you can do is cite the aspect of, well, contract problems and contract negotiation issues. That's the only thing that you can draw from that. Or maybe perhaps Derek Brunson just wants to retire. So those are just some situations in this particular matter that I guess is just a little bit hard for some people to understand. But nonetheless, neither here or there. What else is going on in the world of combat sports? So let's see here. I'm going to mark down on the comment section a little timestamp because I'm going to talk about the next particular subject, right? Which is about what's his name? Tyann Booth. I'm going to talk about Tyann Booth right here. So Where is Tyan Booth? Okay. So, Tan Booth. Okay. Let's edit. Just excuse the spelling error on that one, right? For those of you that don't know who Tyan Booth is, he's a former professional boxer turned YouTuber that started talking a whole bunch of smack to different boxers. Some odd 4 years ago, he opened his YouTube channel and then just I don't know what happened afterwards. I mean, he got into some situations with Coogan. He got into some situations with these guys and that. Let me play to you a video from 4 years ago regarding Tanya Booth. This is, by the way, a guy that I know in the UK, Zane Heavy Boxing Dosage, a guy who is a great friend of the show, big supporter of the show. And I'm going to show you a video that he's done about Tyan Booth just to kind of give a context on this particular matter. By the way, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe on this channel, but also don't forget to like and subscribe to Zane Musa's boxing channel right here for all your boxing and predictions and whatnot. So here it is.
How you doing, guys? Zane's Heavy Boxing Dosage here, back with another video. And in this video, I'd like to talk about something that's quite relative in the boxing world, quite new, a bit different as well. And we're going to get into it, and I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Mr. Tyan Booth. He used to be a boxer. He once was a boxer, but he's left that career. I think his boxing career is suspended by the British Board of Boxing Control. But yeah, he's been suspended as a boxer. I don't really know why. I haven't really researched a lot into it. But Tyan Booth, I can tell you one thing about him, that he's a great person. I know a lot of people won't like him in respects of what he's been saying, about a lot of boxers and a lot of people in the boxing world, and a lot of controversial sort of subjects, But I actually like Tyan Booth, and I like his videos, and I'm a huge fan, because
Yeah. So speaking of controversial topics, right? One of the controversial topics that he's done, I'm talking about Tyan Booth. He mentioned something to the effect of one of Coogan's kids, right? And it made him look like an absolute Chester of a thing. You know what I mean? You know what I mean by Chester that rhymes with that. Can't say that because you know how sensitive social media and YouTube can be nowadays. So you guys take an imagination as to what that is, but basically just off color comments about somebody's kid, and it made him look really bad. And so now, over the past months, it's been 2 months now since this guy hasn't posted anything on YouTube, and we're wondering why that is, right? Could it be that, let's say, maybe he just had some issues in his life that he doesn't want nobody to know about? Maybe he's just out in hiding because he's just decided he's just going to train for an upcoming fight that he had going on. But nonetheless, here's more on Tyan Booth. By the way, this is a video that was done 4 years ago, just to keep in context and try to understand, which, by the way, Zane here mentioned something to the effect that, yeah, Tyan says a lot of off-color stuff, but now, 4 years later, it's coming back to haunt him because of his recent comments that he's made. But more on this.
I've been doing this YouTube thing for a while now. I've been doing this YouTube boxing video for a year now, and I've got nowhere near to the level of sort of success that he's got. Tyan Booth is like naturally a funny person, and the topics that he talks about in boxing are like controversial subjects.
Now, look, here's the thing. I 100% agree with Zane on this, right? Because that is one of the things that is really quite attractive about Tyan Booth's particular brand, is that he is out there just putting controversial topics that a lot of people in boxing are just not willing to touch. Now, I think it's really interesting having a character like Tyann Booth. He sort of reminds me of a crossover between, let's say, Howard Stern and Sean Strickland. So yeah, I more on Tyann Booth right here. And by the way, keep in context, this is a video 4 years ago by my man Zane, uh, boxing dosage right here.
which
Don't forget to
no
like and
one gives
subscribe.
the 100% truth of. Some people may be um like, how can I say it, maybe a bit skeptical of what their opinions are. They're not really gonna put their whole sort of perspective out there, because they might sort of get.
Yeah, I know. Just to continue on and to add on to what Zane is saying here, what he's trying to say is that a lot of people in the boxing business know each other and they have this close knit circle. So for you to talk bad about another guy, you would have to confront them at some point. And well, that's where it kind of gets really iffy with how guys are going to talk. And then also on top of that, there's media guys, there's boxing trainers, there's fighters themselves that want to keep certain relationships with other people. So they're going to be very careful about what they say in a business where everybody is within this close circle of things. So, but more on Zane right
Get
here.
judged. They're sort of anticipating like what the public will say, something of that nature. But the fact that Tyann Booth keeps it real, and he, makes a joke out of everything. It's funny. It attracts a lot of people, and boxing needs personality. I keep mentioning this.
Yeah, no, 100%. And by the way, that's why I said keep in mind this is a video from 4 years ago. So you got to understand that what Zane is saying here is you need a lot of personalities in boxing because at some point it just becomes very redundant when everybody is just in it for the money or you're just in it for the competition and there's no compelling storylines. Everybody is just in some sort of going out of sale business with all the fights and all the fix ups that they do with whatever, right? It's just all redundant, right? It's just all the same thing. Everybody wants to do the same thing. It's a copycat league. Everybody fights the same. Everybody promotes the same. At some point, you want to just switch it up, just very similar to Chael Sonnen in MMA. When Chael Sonnen challenged Anderson Silva for the 185 undisputed championship, Anderson Silva ran the mixed martial arts world. He was this quote unquote respectful martial artist, a guy that your kids can look up to, a guy that does everything by the samurai code. He lives a life of a martial artist and this and that. And then here comes Chael Sonnen, who doesn't believe in bowing, who doesn't believe in all these Eastern traditions of martial arts, but rather believes in the aspect of hyping up a fight through professional wrestling means and then having the personality to go along with it. But more on my man Zane on this one right here.
Like, the fact that you're a boxer, you need to be able to sell tickets, man. You need to be able to put bums
That's
in
right.
seats. And that's what Tyann Booth is doing, If he was to get back into boxing, I guarantee you'd have a huge following, you know. And the fact that he keeps it real is what's more entertaining about his videos, because a lot of people in the boxing community don't give their wholehearted thoughts on some subjects, And the fact that he started this YouTube thing a couple months ago is really inspiring, So I got to take my hat off to Tyann Booth, a great sort of person, I believe. I don't care what a lot of people say about him. I actually gonna give a lot of respect to Tyann Booth, because you're making me laugh. I'm not even gonna lie. He makes me laugh. You need to check out his videos. My boy, them Umar, IFL Umar. Just a few examples, and there's sort of like, you know, I need to get into it. Let me get into it. You know, the sort of things he's saying. He's dissing Kugan Cassius, you know, of IFL TV. You know, he's the co-founder of IFL TV. You know, let's keep it real though. Let me keep it real. I don't like hating on people. I don't like saying any negative things about anyone because that's not my style. Otherwise, if
Yeah, I second Zane on that one. I agree with him. I don't like talking bad about anyone either, unless of course it's warranted and you absolutely have to. That I understand, but yeah, he's definitely onto something on that one, right? Even with the guys that are very respectful in the fight game, whether it's George St. Pierre or whether it's name a boxer, Katie Taylor, or something to that extent, right? All these people that are really kind, really just not a trash talker type. It's not in their personality to do that. These guys, they will tell you straight up that they like the people that are the trash talkers of the world. They like people that go out and trash talk and this and that. So give George St. Pierre, for example, right? A guy that we know is one of the most respectful people of all time in the world of mixed martial arts, if not the entire combat sports world. Now, what is significant about this guy? Well, the fact is that he is a respectful martial artist, but if you ask him about his favorite characters in martial arts movies, he said that one of his favorite guys in the world of fictional martial arts films is none other than Johnny Lawrence of Cobra Kai, and we're talking about George St. Pierre. Now, why is that? Well, because even though it's not in his personality to do so, we're always going to be attracted by the people that can do that, that can act like that are willing to act like that, because there is something real behind what it is that they're saying. But at the same time, even if they're faking it or just doing it out of entertainment, that's just literally what it is. It's entertaining to watch, and we love it because it compels us to want to watch these people and to see what they're going to do next.
I wanted to do that, I could do that because I'm a whole honest person, but I don't want to be able to do that. I don't want to do that. But the fact that he's dissing Kugan Cassius, you know, is so funny because, you know, Kugan Cassius is the sort of guy that will never get no pussy when he's younger. Because, like, look at the guy.
Excuse the language.
He ain't got the looks, does he? He don't have the looks, but because like he's a co-founder of IFL TV, he runs a successful company. You know, he's putting pictures up of women that a lot of men will find desirable. Taking selfies with them, a lot of group pictures with them, and he's posting them up on social media, and just to prove that he's getting pussy now, you know. So that makes me laugh at the end of the day because Coogan's we can think back and look at Coogan's younger pics when he was younger, and you can tell he never got none of that when he was younger. So he's excited, you know, for the first time he's getting something, and he's not afraid to show it off, you know. But a lot of men have been doing this thing from early, Coogan, you know. So I got to mention that, you know, like it's not really a big thing. Like honestly, it's not. You know, it's overrated to be honest. Like, you know what I mean? Women, like, I mean, yeah. And not only that, like,
So I wanted to bring something up with that, right? In regards to Coogan posting pictures of women and trying to show that he's the top G or this and that. This is very common for a lot of guys to somehow show that, like, oh, okay, look at me. Like, I have all these women around me or whatever. And somehow it's supposed to, like, what, make you look macho? It's supposed to make you look like you're better than someone or something to that effect. So I just thought that was always strange when people do that, right? I get it. There is an aspect of promotion that deals with that. Obviously, as young Muslim males, where we're very conscious of how people look at us and how the world views us and how we're going to be perceived by our actions. That's just not something that we desire to do or have any ambitions of or this and that. But in the modern world that you live in today, it just seems like some sort of like symbol of your high value as a man, that you can somehow obtain this many women, and somehow that's supposed to signify something, when in reality it really doesn't. There is none of that, right? But it's just interesting because I guess what I'm trying to get at with what Tyann Booth does with the constant bashing and dissing of Coogan Cassius is that it kind of reminds you of that kid in high school who was a dork, right? And maybe some of us were that guy, maybe some of us weren't, or maybe some of us can relate to a guy like that. But either way, Coogan Cassius is constantly being reminded of his past and who he was, as opposed to who he is with the likes of Tyann Booth. And somehow that agitates Coogan, and Tyann Booth gets a kick out of it, and in turn, he gets an audience based on that, because he's here dissing a guy who is head of the IFL network, who, by the way, is one of the biggest boxing YouTube channels out there. But more on this.
There's a lot of things that he's been saying as well. Like I gotta break it down as well. Like there's so many things, but I'm just gonna keep it one or two things off the top of my head, which are
Yeah, me too. One of the things that I could think of off the top of my head was that he talked about Terrence Crawford's wife and made reference to her weight. And as you would imagine, this is not something that Terrence Crawford is going to take lightly. And this has been going on over the years. But obviously, Terrence Crawford and Tyann Booth were never in the same place for them to ever have this being acknowledged or somehow confronted in any kind of way.
I found really funny and amusing. Another thing is dissing Carl Froch's wife, saying she's a cold digger and she's only with you because you got the money. That
Oh yeah, that's a good one too, where he always talks about Carl Froch's wife and whatnot. That is one of the biggest things that Tyann Booth has been known for, but not so much as of late in the recent times. And I think there was a video of Tyann Booth where he went out there and was running or jogging or something like that, and then Eddie Hearn and Carl Froch were in that same place, and so nothing came of it. But yeah, neither here or there.
that is hilarious as well. And it's because he's from the same area as Carl Froch, Nottingham, and the fact that he also mentioned that if Carl Froch was a bin man, he wouldn't have a he wouldn't have a wife like that. Oh my god! So yeah, Carl Froch has been getting annoyed with him, man. So that's what I mean. Like little opinions like that, like people that are in high authority sort of get like hurt over things like that when Tyann Booth is a normal man like some of us that are just trying to make something of themselves. So yeah, these comments shouldn't really affect Carl Froch. He's retired and he could just live a peaceful life. He's got a good boxing CV. uh Knocked out George Groves in front of 80,000 people. These are just comments like any other public people would probably have of you. But Tyann's just the sort of person that's a realist, so he will just put it out there. And I like Tyann's comedy. I like the fact that he's funny. He could open up a lot of careers from this opportunity he's done, on YouTube, opportunity that he's made for himself. But it's really funny, and it's really getting a lot of attention, and that's really good in my opinion, because it shows that a lot of people are interested in him. And he's bringing a lot of sort of supporters that are not really into boxing, but they're finding him funny, so it attracts a lot of attention for the sport of boxing. So it's a good thing in my opinion. Like people like Adrian Broner that are outspoken, they put bums in seats. And controversy sort of like sells in itself. And he gives a lot of interesting thoughts on interesting topics as well. What I noticed is that he had to go at Michelle Joy Phelps as well. So But
Oh yeah, this is another one of the classic beefs that Tyann Booth has going on. He constantly goes at Michelle Joy Phelps and references her to be somewhat of a harem of some sort. But yeah, that's
to be
quite a bit
honest,
of
like
call.
I can understand where he's coming from because the things he says about her, like they're kind of true. Like she wouldn't have 70,000 subscribers if she wasn't like if she was that pretty, you know. There's a lot of other boxing interviewers that were around. I think it was Jane or something. I don't know what her name was. I can't remember off the top of my head, but she didn't look as good looking as Michelle Joy Phelps. She didn't have that many subscribers. You know what I mean?
Well, if you want to relate this to the MMA side, right, you look at Laura Sanko, who is one of the current and new pay per view commentators for the UFC. Obviously, a woman, obviously, somebody that uh, is somebody that they want to try to promote on TV, right? For these same reasons that Zane here had just mentioned. The thing is, though, the one thing you do got to give credit to Sanko is that she actually does know and understand the sport. And then you also got to ask, well, is Michelle Joy Phelps in that same realm when it comes to boxing? Like, how much does she really understand the sport to break it down in a technical matter? And also, how great of an interviewer is she to, let's say, ask compelling questions that would bring out the personalities and the livelihoods of these fighters in terms of their in terms of showing a side of them that you normally would not see on camera or elsewhere in other non-candid situations.
That's what I'm saying. So, you know, Tyan Booth, I like the fact that you're making your own videos and you're keeping it real because a lot of people are afraid to keep it real, you know, and I like the fact that you're keeping it like that, you know. Um, I know a lot of people have their thoughts on Tyan Booth's channel, but James Every Boxing Dosage, fully support it, man. Keep them videos up because you know they're getting a lot of attention, and you know boxing need personality. Boxing needs personalities. I have to I have to stress that out. Like if you're a boxer that don't have a personality, you won't be able to get as far as a person as a boxer that has a personality. So someone like Adrian Broner, even though he's losing, he's always going to be able to sell tickets and he's always going to be able to make more money than the average boxer because a lot of people hate and a lot of people like him. You know what I mean? So people want to see him lose at the same time. People want to see him win at the same time. And the fact that he very outspoken, you know, is it sells. It's controversy. You know what I mean? It sells in boxing.
So Zane brings up a very good point in this, right? Because there's a lot of people out there that really have this aspect of a high horse way of looking at the fight world. In other words, I've seen this with MMA fighters, with boxers, and other combat athletes. They have this mentality where, well, I'm going to let my fighting do the talking. I'm a real fighter. I fight. All this other talking nonsense means nothing. They just look down on this process. Look, here's something that you got to understand from a decompartmentalized perspective, right? Meaning that you got to look at this from two lenses. Number one, you're correct. If you're a hardcore fan, you're a true martial artist, you're a true boxer, true fighting man, and everything in between, guess what? I agree with you. The problem is the world doesn't see the fight world within our lenses of fighters and hardcore observers. They don't see the world in that perspective. What they see is a world of wanting to be entertained, stimulated, and also give a reason of getting out of their houses in the middle of a Saturday night for them to come and watch you fight, whether it's live at the arena or at home in the comfort of their living room and their TV set. So people in the fight world really got to get out of their high horse with this idea of, oh, I don't like all this talking or this and that. And then they look down on it to the point where they really have some sort of strong convictions about it. Like, okay, I get it. I understand the moral compass that you have when it comes to that. But at the same time, if you are in a business of trying to get attention and trying to get the most money and trying to provide for your family in the most possible way, there's a way where you can promote yourself, get yourself out there, show your credibility, show your sense of charisma, but also show your sense of personality without having to sell out or somehow compromise any moral compass that you have. But more on this.
boxing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So those are my thoughts. You know what I mean? So props to Ty and Booth. You know for keeping it real. And yeah, I'm fully supporting them, and I look forward to the next video, man. So keep them coming. Make sure you keep them coming. And yeah, as far as my channel goes, I'm just gonna keep on grinding. Even though I'm not getting there as much as these guys, it doesn't really matter to me, man, because it's a passion thing at the end of the day. And if I'm gonna get somewhere, I will. It might just take a little bit more longer. But it is what it is, man. I like the fact that Tyan Booth is keeping it real. And that was the main topic of this video. Let me know your comments, guys. What do you think? Are you in agreement with what I've said in this video? Let me know if you think Tyan Booth is good for the boxing world, because I personally think he is. And let me know the thoughts and comments in the comment section below, and we could discuss it.
Yeah, check out his channel. Obviously, like I was just saying, this video was made 4 years ago by Zane. And 4 years later, here we are. He hasn't made a content in 2 months. I'm talking about Tyan Booth. I don't know why. I don't know what his reason is why Tyan hasn't made any content. Again, the speculation can vary, right? Are there some mental health issues that are going on there? Does he have a fight coming up and maybe he just wants to somehow, I don't know, concentrate on whatever it is that he has going on? Or maybe he just doesn't want to get on YouTube, or maybe it's just one of those situations where perhaps maybe he had a suspension or something like that. But then someone brought up something to the effect, well, if it was anything to do with a suspension, then why is it that, I don't know, it's 2 months? YouTube suspensions aren't that long. So I don't know. But nonetheless, here's something that you got to understand too, right? To add on to the points that Zane made in that video, that brilliant video that he made 4 years ago about Tyan Booth. Now, the thing is that I had noticed this guy does constantly get strikes on his channel for one reason or another, right? Maybe it's a lot of it is just, perhaps maybe copyright issues. He goes and plays videos that he shouldn't have or doesn't have permission to, or they have very strict, let's say, guidelines on, playing certain, videos. Maybe the Fair Use Act is not available in that particular video that he's playing. Maybe he does, yeah. So they give you a strike for that, and then he does, content where he tries to talk to prostitutes in Nottingham or Sheffield or whatever area in England that he's in, and then that gets a little bit dodgy. So here's the thing that I'm trying to say is that controversy sells, but extreme controversy is the fastest way to get you canceled and deplatformed. And that is the unfortunate part, right? Because here's something that Zane had mentioned, right? He said something to the effect where, well, I don't mind uh doing this for a passion, taking a longer time to, let's say, get monetized or get recognized or blow up in the YouTube scene. He doesn't mind taking the slow route, right? Because the way that Tyan Booth blew up, it's, yes, he does have a platform. He has fought the likes of Chris Eubank, which is enough for him to get a certain amount of notoriety or a certain amount of followers to come to his channel and watch his content. The problem is that it's very short lived and you become a target, just like Andrew Tate, just like Kevin Samuels, just like what was this other YouTuber's name? His name was Tommy Sotomayor. If you guys know anything about Tommy Sotomayor, all those people that are in the red pill community of some sort, he was a very controversial African American conservative figure on YouTube and had gotten canceled somewhere down the line. So all these guys, they, Sneeko, this and that is another one. All these YouTube acts that get canceled are probably the same reason why they get a lot of views. So somewhere down the line, you got to somehow tote that line. And I don't know if that has any correlation to why, let's say, Tyan Booth hasn't been on YouTube in a while. But nonetheless, I agree with everything that Zane said. Guys like this are needed for boxing, whether they are the fighters themselves or whether they are media personalities or the YouTubers or the journalists or the promoters that are part of this sport, such as Eddie Hearn, who is gracious enough to give everybody interviews and to just promote the sport to the next level. So all of this is a very important aspect of the fight game, because one thing you got to understand about fighting is that it's a very niche thing. Boxing, MMA, and you go down the list of all the other disciplines that are not even as popular as boxing or MMA, right? It's a very niche thing. Only very few people know about it. Now, let's go back down to the most niche sports of them all. Let's say college wrestling. Now, you look at the numbers in that, it's not the most popular sport. But if you look at the observers outside of the participants of that sport, most of the observers in a sport are just participant majority anyway. And I'm talking about the world of wrestling. Because in order for you to enjoy amateur wrestling, you almost have to be an amateur wrestler yourself or had some sort of experience in it or has dealt with it in some kind of way. That's as niche as it gets. Now, with boxing, it's almost the same thing. It's almost like the only way that you can really understand boxing is if you've trained it. Because if you've trained it, guess what? You can be entertained by watching it. Whereas if you're a casual and you don't train any martial arts at all, let alone boxing, you're going to think this is one of the most boring things in the world. And I know that a lot of boxing guys don't like to hear that. But I'm telling you, as a guy who is a mixed martial arts guy, a guy who loves boxing at the same time, and looking at it also from an objective lens point of view, from an outsider's perspective. An outsider's perspective that is not the fighters, that is not the hardcore observers of the sport, people that are not involved in the sport in any way, but people that work regular 9 to 5 jobs and don't really care about anything else outside of their world other than their family and their work and their neighborhood and everything else in between, right? So Zane also mentioned in that video how Tyan Booth brings about a lot of people that are not boxing heads, right? And I got to question that, right? Now, does he bring in people that are not boxing heads? To what extent, right? I think it's safe to say that there's a lot of people in the UK boxing scene that, well, have and share these types of sentiments that Tyan Booth has. Because let's face it, what is Tyan Booth, right? And here's something that people love in England when it comes to storylines. They love the underdog storyline. They love the guy that is coming up. They love the guy that is in this working class position and then eventually rises himself to the top. And you can even ask Eddie Hearn this, he'll tell you himself. Once you get to that top, that's when they start really downing you. That's when they stop becoming relatable towards you. And this is one of these situations where they just feel like you're just not one of the boys anymore. You're not one of the lads. You're not out there in the pub every night, getting shit faced and getting drunk and all this other crazy stuff. So you're just not one of them anymore. You just think you're better than everybody else. So that's kind of the British mentality and how they think. And guess what? Tyan Booth is in this interesting position in his life right now where not only is he the quintessential working class lad that everybody can cheer for, but at the same time, he is this guy that is relatable in all forms of the degeneracy that they display in their society. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I got to say about Tyann Booth in that particular subject. But more on the other uh, topics of combat sports, if we want to stay on boxing for a second, how about the fact that they actually signed Usyk versus Tyson Fury while overlooking Francis Ngannou? It is kind of strange, isn't it? It's really strange, to be quite honest with you. Only because I think to myself, you know what? It's like a lot of things can go wrong in this situation, right? And they don't seem to somehow really take any of that into, high consideration. They just look at Francis Ngannou as, well, he's easy pickings. This is supposed to be just another standard win. We're going to go in there and we're going to do what boxers do. He's an MMA guy, so he doesn't have the experience in the world to be able to do this. I don't know. I don't have a very good feeling about it. So I'm just going to say that right now, so that if in the future he gets knocked out, I'm talking about Tyson Fury, then right here we have a sound audio bite for you right here to say that, like, yeah, I've had a bad feeling about this the entire time. And now here we are in a world where Francis Ngannou just beat the lineal heavyweight champion of the world, who's also a sitting WBC champion, but yet gets to keep that belt based on what? Because it was a 10 round fight rather than a 12-round fight. And even if it was an exhibition, it just looks so strange, right? That there's no title on the line, but then you put a title on the line for Alexander Usyk coming up right after. So I don't know. It's very strange. And then what are they going to do? Are they just going to have Francis Ngannou come in there and fight Usyk instead, if he's the one that knocks him out, and then give him a shot for the unified championship? And then maybe come back and fight Fury to complete a true undisputed championship again for the WBC championship. So a lot of strange things that are going on in that particular decision making that they did with signing Usyk right away. Maybe it's just one of those situations where, like, you know what? It was always the money all along. And now they just had the right enough amount of money for Tyson Fury to go out there and risk it all. Because once again, this is the reason why they call it the skills challenge in Saudi Arabia, right? They call their promotions a skills challenge because they want to challenge the skills of all these top guys, and they can afford to do so. So either way, yeah, that's all that I have for the night. I just thought I'd come in here, talk about just some random subjects of combat sports and everything in between that. What else? What else is there? There's a Logan Paul fight with Dylan Dennis, and then there's the KSI Tommy Fury fight. There's also UFC 294, and then 295 in November, and then 296 in December. Let's take a look at the boxing schedule that they have going on. By the way, if you guys are ever wondering what type of boxing matches they have out there, I urge you guys to just take a look at this particular website right here. I believe it's called Boxing Scene. Hold on a second here. Let me see here. Boxing schedule. Boxing Scene. Okay, right here. Right here. So this is the upcoming schedule for the boxing that they have going on right now. So we have on October 7th, Evelyn Bermudez versus Kim Claval, and then Lee Wood versus Josh Warrington, which is taking place in Sheffield. Gilberto Ramirez taking on Joe Smith. That's going to be a cruiserweight fight. That's interesting. And then, yeah, there's the Tommy Fury fight that I had mentioned. Then there's the Tim Tszyu, Brian Mendoza fight. Janebek taking on Vicenzo. That's going to be a good one. That's taking place in Texas. That guy is a monster of a middleweight. Miguel Berchelt, Diego, okay, Buatsi taking on Dan Aziz. That's a good one. Jack Catterall taking on Jorge Linares. Alexis Rocha taking on Jonathan Gonzalez taking on Zapata. Amanda Serrano, how about this? Taking on Daniela Ramos. So staying active right there. Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou, Oshek Foster. That's going to happen on the same day. That's a big card that they have going on for the Tyson Fury Francis Ngannou fight. By the way, shout outs to the card that they're building on that. Adrian Broner, who, by the way, was mentioned earlier by Zane as one of these guys that are the personalities of the boxing world that you need. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys right now when it comes to the boxing world and it comes to the MMA world. I hope you guys like the content that I just provided for you guys. Sorry for the lack of light. Let me there we go. Let's put on a little bit of light here. But yeah, nonetheless, that's all that I have. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and also check out the new videos that I have had going on when it comes to let's take a look at the videos that I have right here just to show you guys. Present. Here we go here. I'm going to show you guys some of the videos that I have going on right here. So don't forget to check out these videos that I have just before I go. Right here, Kamzat, now an Emirati citizen, early predictions for UFC 294 with Islam Makhachev and Charles Oliveira, how I'm going to see that fight as opposed to, let's say, the first fight, Data White, this is PBC and Showtime Boxing, Edwards versus Covington, ethnic origins and technical breakdown. Right now, the red hot popular video that is going on, the racial undertone of Canelo versus Charlo, more so of the fans, not the fighters. Check that one out. I did that just before the fight. And then the post-fight between Gamrot and Fiziev. How about that? That fight with Gamrot and Fiziev where he basically got his legs taken out from just a block, right? So check out my coverage that I have on that one. Also, my experience training with NBA players at Team Alpha Male, in particular, Kenny Thomas, the former Houston Rockets guy. Check that one out. NBA player claims he can beat John Jones. I made a video about that. Tyson Fury says Tom Aspinall will defeat heavyweight champion John Jones. That's an interesting video you guys would like to check out. UFC video game adding 2013 Conor McGregor. Why? Here's why. I explained why. The KSI Tommy Fury reaction to their face off that I did 12 days ago as I was driving around Old Sacramento. And then Sean Strickland as the new Stone Cold Steve Austin. Also, the Logan Paul versus Dylan Dennis face off. And of course, the red hot popular Nazi champ UFC is not happy with Sean Strickland's title win, and a whole bunch of other catalogs that I can offer for you guys to watch. So yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe, and also share all throughout your media platforms and anywhere you can this particular content, because I'm here to drop only the most epic mixed martial arts content that you can find. So I hope you guys enjoyed the videos, you enjoyed the reaction to the different videos that I just did, and also just the different content that I'm going to present to you guys in this crazy theater of the unknown known as combat sports, in which we are going to continuously enjoy the fights. And don't forget to like and subscribe onto my channel here.